Welcome to the Why Should I Refer You podcast. And it's kind of ironic because today's guest, there's not a lot of questions as to why should you refer him. So mainly we're going to talk about experiences he and I have both had with people that thought they should be referred and didn't deserve it. But I want to introduce my friend, David Trent, friend first, uh, co-laborer on many different fields of battle in business and also a friend in faith. So, David, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your new book?
Well, Mike, I'm 61. I
A Virgo.
yeah, I am about 14 months removed from a 25 plus year journey in wealth management. I started my own firm when I was 33 and had a great run and was blessed enough to have a successful exit and have transitioned into a few different things, which I'm happy to dive into more if you want to. I want to stay on topic with you and what we're talking about, but I'm building out LX Council peer groups. I'm also involved in the mergers and acquisition space. I've got some other things going in the franchise space. So doing a lot of things for that I have chosen to do. And so having fun with that. I just wrote a book called Elevate Others: Lessons for Purpose-Driven Entrepreneurs. And that was really a fun project for me. I'm not a gifted writer, so it was a challenge. And I learned and figured out the process. And I'm really proud of that book. And it's full of stories from my journey, but a lot of teachings from great mentors and folks that I've read books from, and then mixing in some faith and family values into the book. And one of the things I think readers will really love about it is 25 chapters, and each chapter is like a mini book. So even if you're not inclined to read a lot, which I hope you are, you can pick up the book and maybe you find two or three chapters that really resonate with you. So real proud of it.
Yeah, if you don't have a lot of fiber in your diet, this is a perfect bathroom group book. You'll be able to easily get a chapter done while who says men can't multitask, right?
That's
But
right.
yeah, my friend Earl, I particularly I love the book and I like it because it's about actionable stories with actions, right? Here's what you
Right.
do, and that reminds me of one of my favorite books, High Trust Selling by Todd Duncan. At the end of every one of his chapters, he had a manager's kind of template. This is what you do if you manage people in a high trust environment. And I was like, wow, that's genius. So, anyways, I love the book. Highly recommend it. There'll be notes in the show notes. There'll be links to it. But the real reason I had David on, in addition to the fact that I just love talking to him, is by necessity of the multiple businesses you've been involved in, some one that you sold, but some that you've kept, and some that you're growing. Is there's been a ton of conversations involved in that, and there's been centers of influence, there've been clients, and so referrals and relationships are kind of at the core of everything you do, right?
Correct. Very, very true.
Right. And so, like, this podcast is about what is so often an unconscious conversation. And we're trying to bring it out into a conscious realm so that people that are motivated by helping other people, that are inclined toward relationship based sales, can start to, number one, be more effective, but also number two, be more conscious of how they can reduce risk and increase opportunity. So let's get to it. So, like, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna say it. So,
Well,
like,
hang on a
go
second.
ahead,
I
hit
like
it.
that phrase, reduce risk and create opportunity. Is that what you said?
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
keep going. Just made a
Because
note
that's,
of
I
that.
mean, my book, Can I Borrow Your Car, is fundamentally about mitigating risk in the referral relationships, because that's the
Yep.
real reason you're not getting more business. You're not getting more introductions. But the more I thought about it, that this is the follow-up book's going to be Why Should I Refer You? Is I am absolutely confident that even for somebody like you with a great network, I'm very, very, very thankful to be a part of it, right? But the great network, that you're losing 90% of the potential referrals that you're mentioned in a conversation, and that's because you're not present. right? I like there's three questions in business that are vital, and they're all linked together. The first one is why should I meet you? Why should I
Okay.
meet with you? The second is why should I buy? And the third is why should I refer? And they're not independent. They're just a continuum. And so like
Why should I meet you?
why
Why
should I
should
meet
I
with
buy? And why should I refer you? Okay.
Yeah, those are the three questions. Like when I look at as a business consultant over 30 years, I can tie every single aspect of a business to one or all of those questions.
Love that.
Right. And so, like for me, I always approach stuff from a coaching perspective. How can I take really complex things like how to run a successful business over decades
Hmm.
and distill them into relevant questions that you can handle? So, here's the thing. You ready, David?
I'm ready.
I bet you that you're involved in more conversations, but not present. And what I mean is, people like you that are givers, and you are a giver, right?
Yep.
Have other people talking about them in conversations when they're not present. And so I've always been struck by the fact that I know my clients, my coaching clients, and people who read the book and other stuff. I know that they've got people talking about them and trying to introduce them because that's why we get all the surprise referrals. I guarantee you, you got unsolicited referrals when you were a financial professional, where all of a sudden a client would be like, "Hey," or somebody call you and say, "I was talking to your client and I want to sit down." And you're like, "Wow, how'd that happen?" It happened because you were brought up in a conversation. And often you were brought in a couple of conversations, maybe over a period of years. The challenge is if you can't answer successfully, why should somebody meet with you? Why should they buy from you? And why should they refer you? In a
Mhm.
manner that's worth sharing, how can we expect even our most advocate type people, how can we expect them to do it effectively? And here's what happens. Somebody says, "Oh yeah," and a client goes, "Wow, you need to talk to David Trent. He's a great financial advisor." Well, I don't need one. Boom. And you're out of the conversation. That doesn't mean that that person wouldn't have been a great meeting for you, even if they weren't buying.
Right.
Probably they would have, but you're out. And that's what I really want to get into here with the why should I refer you is here's what happens. Number one, how can we increase the amount of conversations? And that's where the why should I refer you happens.
Okay.
Because fundamentally, that's what goes on when you meet somebody. I mean, think of all the professionals you've met in the last year, David.
Right.
My God, how many of those people did you say to yourself immediately, "Wow, that's somebody I'm going to refer business to,"
Yeah. I get it.
right?
Yeah.
But unconsciously, that question was asked and answered, like because how you perceive them, what value you think they offer, whether they have integrity. We were just talking about Larry Levine before we got on, the selling from the heart. What in your mind makes someone worth you becoming more proactive about referring them?
Probably just success stories that are memorable of how they've served their clients.
Expand on that because I agree.
Um, I'm trying to think of a specific example,
Well,
in
don't
the,
violate any FINRA regulations, my friend.
so I would say, in the wealth management space, it could be that uh, you have a client that's in my experience. Let's just say I'm thinking of an example, a client that says, "Man, David really helped me get to a point where I was able to, as he put it, get to work optional lifestyle, where I was able to uh, I continued working, but I had the ability to retire and not work. But just having that peace of mind allowed me to go ahead and maybe work another 2 or 3 or 5 years. And then there's other stories where we've gotten to that point and they can make that decision, and clients did make that decision. Hey, I'm going to retire now. Maybe they enter into another business. Maybe they go do philanthropy, whatever that may be. But that success story of getting them to that decision point where they have the freedom to say, hey, I'm going to keep working because I want to, or I'm ready to do something different.
So that's beautiful. And for me, that represents the interaction between why should I refer and why should I meet? Because when you can get to a conscious understanding within your most trusted referral sources and clients, right?
Right.
Your best center of influence is always a happy client,
Yeah.
always, period, because they can answer why should I buy, right?
Right.
They've got the answer for that one. But when they have that success experience, or when they've seen that success experience as a result of other people working with you, that's the best answer. Why should they meet?
Yeah.
Because it's not so much as, hey, are you looking for a financial advisor? Because that's such a small, minute amount of time. And this is what I repeated on almost every podcast, I'm sure, but I want to get your feedback because I think you and I talked about this earlier in the year, in the spring. But like, if the marketing message we're creating from a referral standpoint, right, is that we want to have introductions to people that are ideal clients that are ready to buy, we have throttled the amount of meetings we can potentially have with ideal prospects. And I think it's because people understand that referrals can get you really amazing introductions to people that are ready to buy. But just like with regular marketing, that's really hard to predict. And so, like, here's my thing, David, are you looking for a financial advisor right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
No.
right? Me either. But if somebody's trying to answer the question that I will ask a friend of mine trying to introduce me to a financial advisor, if my answer to that is, well, I'm a great financial advisor, and or if their answer is, hey, I'm a great financial advisor, I'm not interested. I know 150 great financial advisors, and I work with 20 or 30 of them already. Like, like for me to be willing to decide to invest a half an hour to an hour to meet with a financial advisor that's trying to have me as a client, and I am a world class shitty client, by the way. I'm just because I'm a psycho entrepreneur, you know it.
Right.
Like I don't care until I care. I'm just a nightmare. So feel bad for my guy Matt. But right when you think about it, what makes somebody worth referring? Well, fundamentally, if I'm only referring you when somebody wants to buy, I'm only you're only going to find out about it when I find that unicorn.
Right.
Consequently, like I'm very comfortable referring you to all kinds of people. I've been sick and lots of stuff going on, so sorry about not enough referrals. But I'll get back on track, bud. I will. But like I can introduce you for a number of reasons. So like I'm just going to give some to the reader, and I mean to the listener, I want you to respond. Number one, I I can introduce you to anyone who's interested in learning because of your passion and your pursuit of reading new books and sharing information. That makes you very easy to introduce to other business owners because literally I could go back over the last 52 weeks and come up with 50 different books that you've read and talked about and say, hey, have you heard of this book? Or if I look on their bookshelf, like, hey, that's really weird. One of my buddies was just talking about, a couple
Yeah.
months ago, that book. Maybe you guys should, so I can introduce you as a learner, right?
Right.
The second thing is your expertise at business, right? So business owners generally like talking to other business owners that successfully exited. Because
Correct.
right. Like if you think about it, like if somebody is this, if someone who's a successful business owner that sold their company, I'm probably interested in talking to them.
For sure.
And if they've got
Yeah.
something to sell me, that's fine. But I'm interested in that meeting because of their experience, that success story that you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at it as somebody that you could learn from and want to know what about their experience and most people selfishly are going to want to, how can that benefit me, right? So
Totally. You know, so when you look at, so you're building out this M&A business, right?
mhm.
When you think about how many different professionals that are involved in a multi-year M&A process, right? So you got your what, 12 to 24 months of getting to trust before the person becomes a potential client, right? Then you've got your that period of time that could be anywhere from what, a year to 3 years.
Or you're just talking about getting somebody's business ready to sell.
Yeah,
Yeah, in some cases, I mean, there's some cases where a business is ready for a transaction. So it just depends on the
totally.
business and the entrepreneur or entrepreneurs that own the business. So,
Yeah, and I totally agree. But we're looking at realistically at least 12 months to maybe 5 years
oh, for sure, yeah,
for complete transition. I mean, there's got to be 20 or 30 professionals that will be involved with that business during that period of time. You know, your attorney, your CPA, potentially other consultants, vendors, all of these different people. As you are interacting with these business owners and you're in this position of great influence, I think you would agree that,
correct.
right? How are you analyzing these new professional relationships that sometimes you inherit because they're already there? How are you assessing and vetting them as to whether or not you might be willing to work with them beyond the current transaction?
Let me go here, and you can stop me if I'm not answering the question, but I know what you're talking about, and I'm going to think of a story, an example. I'm engaged with a gentleman right now. He owns a business. It's in the mental health space. They bill Medicare, doing 15 million revenue,
Nice.
probably 2.5, 3 million EBITDA profits. And he's actually has a very good company, but man, he really has a ton of upside in that business. And so one of the things that really needed some work is, and this, you see this a lot, but his financial professionals that were helping him, the business has really outgrown them. And so I've introduced him to one of my favorite, because I respect him so much, a CPA firm that's really unique. They come in and real holistic. They'll do an initial scope of work, but then you get on a monthly retainer with them, and they're constantly working on how do we keep improving your situation, get your financials where when you go get ready to sell, there's not going to be any kind of uh, I shouldn't say any, but the buyer is going to be very pleased with being able to get a picture of the company, at least through the financials.
And that's an entirely different type of CPA relationship.
Right,
I mean, and I'm not sure all business owners know that.
right.
So how did do you mind if we just stay there for a little bit?
Yeah, yeah,
When you figured out that there were, let's just say to be charitable, some gaps in
yeah,
levels of capability,
right.
how'd you approach that process of preparing that business owner to be referred to your trusted advisor?
Well, in this case, I just said let's set up uh, a 30-minute Zoom call to start conversation, and then you just want to make sure. For me, I'm making sure, and the three of us were on that call, and I will stay engaged because this particular client will probably execute a transaction of some sort in the next 3 years. Um, he could do it sooner, but that's kind of his time frame for what his goals are and that kind of thing. So, and I'll continue to. We've had a subsequent call, and there's been an engagement with that CPA, and I'll continue to stay in the loop. Uh, uh, and it will probably remove myself somewhat as that process gets streamlined and I feel like it's heading in the direction it needs to head. So,
Cool. So just I'm going to keep digging in because I think there's a ton of value for people listening. So this CPA firm, how did how did you get into relationship with them, and how did you figure out, and I'm not trying to be funny here, but like how
Yeah.
did you figure out that they were different? What was that process like? Because I think a lot of business owners are they've got relationships that they've had for a number of years that and they may have outgrown them. I've seen it multiple times myself, but mainly on the financial services side, where they've got a financial advisor that is okay for an IRA, but not okay for a cash balance or a defined benefit, really advanced tax planning. How did that process happen with that CPA? Where you got to the point where you could just say to your client, "Hey, we're going to do a 30-minute Zoom." Because it sounds to me like you didn't spend a lot of capital to get your client to get on that Zoom. That it was a pretty
No, no, he was in. So the CPA that I've formed a relationship with came back from what we're talking about today. Why should I refer you? I was actually, it came out of me building out an LX Council peer group, and was talking with my marketing coach, I'll call her, and we
I
were,
think that's fair to say. She's a marketing coach. No
yeah,
question.
yeah. So she was able to. I was actually just asking her, telling her what I was doing, and said, I really need somebody that's really advanced in this space, and do you know of anyone? And she referred me, and so from there, I have a Zoom call with this particular professional. Did another Zoom call, in-person meeting, really got a feel for her background. She's got, 20 plus years of experience. And I really was seeing in her practice, the way she did things was, I won't say total unicorn, but very unique in how she approached this. And what I loved about her, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but
Go get in the
instead of
weeds.
your traditional CPA relationship where they're doing your taxes and then you get a bill for their time, she totally different, looking at the big picture. And then look, I'm going to be your I'm basically coming in as I'm going to be a part of your team as a fractional. I won't say she's a fractional CFO. She can do that. But more, and I don't know if fractional is even the word, but she becomes a part of the team, and you're going to and figure she determines what kind of monthly retainer makes sense. And then it's not a matter of, you don't have a start and stop with that relationship. It's just you're going to continue to utilize her, and you're going to have a plan on how do we continue to get better on what we're doing. And so that's what I liked about it.
So it's uh, is she in a Lone Star location?
What now?
Lone Star location?
She is, yes.
Yeah. Um, so I'm definitely gonna want to talk to you about her down the road.
Yeah,
So because I'm interested in meeting her.
can make that happen.
Yeah, yeah, I'm positive you can. But because what's interesting for me is it sounds to me like she did a lot of things right. She's a professional. She got referred in, which always helps, right?
Right,
Like, but it seems to me that her why should you meet with me proposition isn't you're hiring a CPA. It's you're purchasing additional profit, revenue, and capacity
right.
that she's positioned herself around growth. Is that fair to say?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And to uh, in this case, the owner he's not super sophisticated on the financial side. And so for him to be able to feel like he can, you know, I wouldn't say fully remove himself, he's going to still have oversight, but it changes that aspect, a huge aspect of his business, to where he's not feeling like he needs to be, checking on it all the time. And he certainly doesn't need to be doing anything uh, that that he shouldn't be doing, that he needs to be paying someone to do this for him. So
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, my CPA, my friend Micah, is my most trusted business advisor, and he's not a. I always tell him he's got a CPA as a license, but he's really just a amazing business consultant, really.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of work like you're describing. But it's gotten to the point where when I talk with prospective people that want to work with me down the
Hmm.
road, I'm like, well, hey, like if it's anything technical on the financial side, like what I think doesn't really matter at this point, you know, other than me being willing to introduce you to Micah. But if Micah doesn't like you and thinks you're full of shit, like like there's going to be no way this goes forward. I don't care what you say. And I've had a couple people are like, "What?" I'm like, "Hey, no problem. In fact, you know what? You don't need to meet Micah. We don't have to worry." But the ones who are like, "Hey, I respect that." They get it because I'm I'm more of a macro level business guy. I think you know
Yeah.
that. Like, I'm not, like the weeds for me are on the referral and process improvement, cognitive side. Technically, I'm not going to dive into the weeds. I'm going to have somebody like that woman you're talking about that I can trust and that once a month or once a week or whatever is going to tell me, hey, keep doing this, keep doing that. And that's awesome. um Man, we're doing good on time too. I knew it would happen. I knew it would happen. So all right. Sorry, I got all excited. Sorry, listeners. I bet some of you want to meet this CPA too. If you're really nice, you can reach out to David on LinkedIn or something, and maybe he'll introduce you. I will say though that like I have a challenge sometimes when I meet really, really superstar people like the one you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Is sometimes I'm really careful about not referring them too much business because then they can't help me. You know what I mean? Is that wrong? Is that wrong, David, to say?
Well, hopefully hopefully they're gonna, as they grow, they're gonna know they need help as well and find people to bring on their team. So that's not an issue. So,
Well, I mean, but I got to tell you, like in that specialty advisor space,
right,
it is the issue. Capacity is the issue.
right,
When you think about people that do what you do, how many people are really doing what you do? Not that many, David.
right.
And you, even though you are somewhat superhuman, and I get the weekly, checklist that proves it, right? Um, I like you've got to limit to how much you can do too.
Oh, there's everybody has some sort of capacity. You like to think you can keep pushing the envelope, or I do. So,
Well, I mean, clearly, I got the spreadsheet yesterday, but
yeah.
anyways, when you just to kind of land the plane a little bit, can you just talk a little bit about how your because we've had some pretty cool conversations about
Yep,
referrals that I think have been enlightening for both of us
right.
over the past year. But can you talk a little bit about how your concept of deciding who and what to refer, how that's evolved over the last year or so?
How I've determined who and what to refer and how it's evolved over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I've just become more and more adept on LinkedIn and actually training my team to help me use LinkedIn for connections and just uh, I try to spend some time on there to not just kind of mindlessly scrolling, but you get to where you recognize someone or something, you go, that looks pretty unique, or that looks like something that might fit into my wheelhouse in terms of my network that we could possibly work together to help each other grow practices. And so I think that's the biggest thing, just continuing to seek that out and trying things. And some things don't work, but LinkedIn's been a huge tool for me with being able to look at people, mutual connections, and finding connections for someone that you want to meet. Uh, there's some pretty cool aha moments that happen from that kind of LinkedIn engagement.
I you could not have done a better answer because what I keep telling people on LinkedIn, um, my clients that are on LinkedIn, is like LinkedIn fundamentally is a place where your answer to why should I meet with you is going to drive your success, not your ability to leverage automation and spam my DMs forever about coaching technology services. Hashtag not interested. Right.
Right,
But
right.
fundamentally, that's what you're talking about the same thing, which is no shock because we've been talking about this. Is I use LinkedIn to find people worth meeting.
Yeah,
And it's almost never where they're talking about what they get paid for or what they do. It,
right.
it's almost always stories about their clients.
It's such a simple statement, what you just said, finding, getting on LinkedIn to find people that you're interested in meeting.
Yeah. I mean, we're fundamentally doing the same thing, which is why we get along. It's like we're both looking to have a network that can give powerfully with resilience to our clients and our friends,
Right, right,
because that's I know that's the cornerstone of your life's philosophy, period. Right?
right,
Abundance follows giving abundantly, right?
right, for sure.
Yeah. But I like how would you encourage people to get started with that on LinkedIn? A listener here is like, wow, this is really cool. Clearly Mike is unbelievably intelligent and good looking, and David's cool too. But it's probably the other way around, actually. David's got a lot more style than I do. And he's and we're gonna prove this in person in St. Petersburg coming up in a month or so.
Yeah.
Like we'll have lots of pictures of you and your wife and none of me, hopefully.
Oh, come on, man.
But dude, man, like if my wife won't be with me when my wife's with me, it's amazing how great I look, right? But what advice would you give to the practitioner or the business owner that's kind of like, hey, where do I go from here? What advice would you give them about how to leverage LinkedIn to find people worth meeting?
I would say just extreme curiosity. So get on and one thing we've done as well is we're engaged, I think, to the highest level we can. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. And what I mean is we've got we subscribe to, I think my team helps me with it, but Sales Navigator, and then I think we're spending about as much money as we can on a monthly basis with LinkedIn. So we have all the tools and stuff, but just curiosity, and that's, I think, so that's getting on there and poking around and looking at people's mutual connections, looking at their content, and there's a lot of I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there that can be a big waste of time, but so you got to be careful with that. But but just being curious, and it can be kind of addictive in a good way, just because you're able to really uncover a lot of opportunities on LinkedIn. So
Yeah, it's interesting. It's because I think there's lots of different ways you can accomplish it. Like I hate the videos on LinkedIn. Like, I mean, not that I hate you, but like I hate the video content because unless I'm driving, because then I can just listen.
right,
But it's hard to be like I prefer an audio book where I've got a consistent message that's coming through over an extended period of time. But for me, what works really powerfully for me is there's two things. Number one, I look for articles, long form articles that I can quickly figure out if you're actually a subject matter expert or not.
got it.
Right.
Yep.
Additionally, I look for personal information that tells me who and what you're about. Like I really like to figure out if I hate somebody before I pay them. Yeah, I get irritated when I find out that myself and a vendor are diametrically opposed to each other on every potential personal value after I've hired them. Right?
Right,
That's just like rarely are you that good. Like I don't care who my surgeon is politically because I just want them to be the best and then go away. But like
right.
I'm going to be engaged with you. I'd rather not have us hate each other socially. But the other thing I look for is I look for how do you comment on other people's posts, right? And so that's how I find a lot of interesting people. Like I really enjoy watching, and it's not all the time, but I enjoy some of the comments that people put on your stuff, right? And how they comment
Yep.
is a big aspect of whether or not I get interested in them enough to put them on a list of, hey, this is somebody I'm going to talk to David about. right?
Yeah, that's one really good example of that's, and that comes back to that curiosity. And thank you for coming up with a specific example because I didn't do that. That's good. That's perfect.
yeah, it's people don't understand. And I by the way, I didn't come up with that. Adam Gray and oh my God, I forgot his name. Tim Hughes from Social Selling, the book Social Selling. Those
Hmm.
guys at DLA Ignite, I went through their program, and it was shocking how they had basically taking analog referral concepts and applied them to a technology driven social media platform,
Hmm.
and they're still driving great results. You know, they were the ones that encouraged me to start sharing about my son's special needs challenges.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that opened it all up for me. Yeah. Well, dude, we are about ready to land the plane, which is interesting since you have some experience with planes. Um, but that's a different referral process. Um, what advice would you give to someone that wants to be referred by a seat like a pretty successful person like yourself, an influencer or a consultant or a business owner? What advice would you give them on how to begin the process of being worth meeting?
To begin the process of being worth meeting.
Like, so if somebody wanted to get an appointment with David Trent, but didn't have the relationship, direct one-to-one relationship referral, what advice would you give them, on how to begin to become worth meeting?
And I think you've just got to be able to tell your story in as few words as possible. And in that story has to be, it may not be direct, it may be indirect, but this me as the potential person they're trying to meet, as in this example, says, man, this is somebody that I think could really fit into my world, and they could be could help me with my network, my clients, and maybe it's somebody that I could help as well. And so being just concise in your story, and obviously not coming across as, if it's somebody's, obviously trying to sell something right away, that's just not going to be of appeal. So
Yeah, unless I don't know anyone else. Yeah, it's interesting. The only thing I would tack onto that is if you're doing a good job in your research as a sales professional
mhm,
and you're identifying prospective ideal clients that you want to be able to get into relationship with, and you understand that multimillionaires rarely buy the first time they talk to you.
right.
Rarely. If you understand that, here's what I tell them to do. Like if they wanted to sell you, I would number one, I would follow David on LinkedIn. I would start reading. There's a lot of stuff there. And by the way, David's worth following because you're going to learn a ton of stuff. You're going to get exposed to a ton of stuff. But I would look at what people comment on his posts, and here's my subtle. This is the number one hit, David. You ready?
I'm ready.
I would pay special attention to the people that he replied to the comment on.
Yeah.
And I would, if you can find someone that David's regularly responding to the comment on, that's someone that you might want to get into relationship with as well. Because that's how I look at it is who's a person of peace, who's a person of influence. Um, I don't respond to every comment, but if you notice I'm responding all the time with a sentence or two, that's
Right.
probably somebody that's got influence over my decision-making process.
Yeah. Great point. Probably
Yeah.
something that I could even improve myself at. So I think the other thing I probably left out too is if that person finding somehow a connection or connections was going to be super helpful as well. So
It's I always look when I look like I every time I get a connection request, I see who's a mutual connection.
sure.
And and often because 9 out of 10 I deny.
Yeah.
Often I look at that and I'm like, nah, not interested, right?
Right.
Because and often it reminds me of people that I need to take out of my network, so I stop getting introductions. But anyways, well, David, anything else you want to share with the audience? And and I will tell you one of those things is how can people find out more about you, and where can and how can they um, purchase your book?
LinkedIn is probably as good a place as any. I'm not saying my profile is perfect, but me and my team have worked to make sure that we paint a pretty good picture on there. So, and then our website is just my last name, and then P as in Paul, G as in growth.com. So trentpg.com. You can find out about us there. And then my book is just as simple as getting on Amazon. We've lowered the price here on the book just came out on November 12th, so it hasn't been out that long. Would love to have you hop on Amazon and get the ebook or the actual book, and we've lowered the price on the paperback quite a bit, so it's super affordable for those that like an actual copy of the book.
And
But
when's the
the
Audible come out?
Audible is probably 30 to 45 days away. So
That is going to be so good. I think your book is really good for Audible.
Well, thank you. Uh, I'll say I agree with you without sounding arrogant, but yeah, I think it's going to be good on Audible. So
Awesome, man. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I encourage everyone to follow David. You will learn and be blessed as a result.
thank you, Mike.